Welcome to the Valareso Capital community, where we discuss the stock market and trading strategies to become a consistently profitable trader and investor.
Hey guys, welcome back to Valareso Capital. My name is Francisco, and today we're gonna go through the market update, and we're also gonna take a look at the weekly watch list. In this video, we're gonna cover what happened in the market in the past week, and we're gonna create a roadmap of what is a high probability scenario for next week. That way we can make really good decisions and increase the probability that we're gonna make profits during the week. So once again, guys, remember that this video is for informational purposes only, is based just on my personal opinion, and is not financial advice. So let's just jump here into the market. And the first name that I wanna cover is clearly a name that everyone has been talking about, right? And this name is gonna be super microcomputers. So the interesting thing about SMCI is that it has been an incredible run, right? I usually don't tend to trade these stocks that just focus mainly on indexes and mega cap names, since I'm a short-term swing trader. But watching the action of these names always give us some really high probability information to create a thesis of what is probably going to happen in the market in the next week. So when you have this kind of a rally, right, and you have this kind of move on a single day, that usually marks a short-term top in the name that we are observing. And given that super microcomputers has been basically what a lot of people call a true market leader, it usually tends to suggest that we're gonna see a pause in the market overall. So pretty intense move in super microcomputers, right? This suggests that we're probably gonna be stuck below this 1,000 level for a long time. And a long time could be perhaps a month and a half. We have to also consider that we are now entering into a seasonality period in which we tend to see bearish tendencies. By bearish tendencies, I'm not suggesting that we're gonna see a bear market or anything like that, right? We tend to see a correction. It's pretty normal to see a correction on February and March, especially during an election year. If you go back in history and start reading about what tends to happen in these dates of seasonality, right? So we do have to take that into consideration. But of course, the most important thing is price action. And when price action, which is what we're seeing is in super microcomputers, lines up with the seasonality, we tend to have some really high probability scenarios to trade and actually make profits. So what are the names that I'm going to be watching, right? So really interesting action once again in super microcomputers. One name that we have to be watching is going to be Nvidia. And one of the reasons that I think that is going to be really important is because Nvidia actually have earnings next week. So I do think that the reaction to Nvidia is going to be really interesting, and it's going to determine what is going to be the tone for the market going into next week, and of course going into the rest of February, and then perhaps into March. So of course Nvidia, if we just zoom back here a little bit, and let me just make this a little bit smaller here. If we just zoom out here, we can see that Nvidia had a pretty fantastic rally, pretty similar to the rally that we saw in SMCI. So if we're going into after a substantial rally like this one, going into earnings increases the probability that whatever they're gonna announce is already priced into the move of the market. But of course, Nvidia can post some crazy numbers, and perhaps we're gonna see a continuation. So that's always a kind of a gamble. But based on what I'm seeing in the market and what I'm seeing in some other names and what the kind of seasonality that we're entering, it wouldn't surprise me if we actually see a pullback in Nvidia after the earnings. So that is a name that we have to take into consideration. And now let's just go into the regular kind of action that we tend to analyze here. And first of all, I wanna take a look at the VIX. And one interesting thing about the VIX is that we are starting to show that we are starting to get really comfortable about this 14 level. And after the huge rally that we saw during this week, in which we rally all the way to 18 in the VIX, I do think that we're starting to enter into a more volatile season of the market. And let me just show you what I'm seeing here in the SPX, because this is a chart that I love trading and that I love watching. So what is interesting about the SPX is that we were talking about last week video, we were talking about the possibility of the SPX actually pausing at the 5,000 level. And of course, we can see that we actually rally all the way to 5,050, but we're now starting to stall here at the 5,000 level. You can see that basically they pin the market really closely to that level on Friday, given that we had OPEX, the options expiration week. So what I'm seeing here in the market is that we are starting to develop kind of a double top here, kind of a double top situation. And why do I think that this is a high probability double top? First of all, a double top only confirms once we actually break to the downside and take out this low. That's the only way that we're going to confirm that is indeed a double top. But we, of course, as traders, have to look for suggestions to anticipate, to make a thesis and try to make our best effort to trade a possible move that is going to happen while we manage our risk. So right here you can see that we are kind of in this double top situation, and first of all, I'm calling this a possible double top because of the price action that we saw on Friday. You can see that we are basically engulfing the previous day candle and we're closing below the 2-day anchor VWAP. That's why the candle is red, meaning that sellers in the short term are back in control. And of course, if we go right here, you can see that the momentum is actually considerably lower than what it was when we actually make this high into 5,050. So those divergences in momentum, they usually suggest that we perhaps are going to see a double top here in the SPX. And then of course, if we actually see a double top here in the SPX, then perhaps that's going to reflect in the rest of the market. So I actually do think that this is actually a shortable move in the SPX. You can probably set your stop somewhere around this 550 area, take a short in the SPX, and then perhaps look for at least a test of this 21 exponential. But I do think that we're probably going to see a continuation down all the way to this value area right here, somewhere around 4,875. I do think that that's a viable target for a move down in the market. Eventually, I do think that we're going to retest this breakout level somewhere around 4,800, but of course we're going to take it day by day. It will be interesting to see kind of a correction in the market all the way to retest that level and then resuming the rally once we are out of the seasonality of this window of weakness based on seasonality. So that's of course kind of an idea, jumping a little bit ahead, but that's what I'm seeing in the SPX. And if we just jump into the Qs, we can see that the Qs actually didn't even test the high right here, right? We were unable to test kind of this reversal candle that we had somewhere around 440, and now we're printing a really considerable lower high. I do think that this is a lower high because you can see right here that we basically engulfed the previous day candle. We closed below the previous day anchor VWAP, right? The 2-day anchor VWAP. And now you can see right here that momentum is also showing a significant decrease in the power of the bullish side. So I do think that the Qs are also a shortable setup. If you are able to short it as close to that anchor VWAP, that's usually the best way. But if you short it somewhere around this anchor VWAP that is anchored from this high, I do think that that's going to be an interesting level to short, because right now the people who got in at those prices are losing money. So based on a psychology perspective, they are more willing to liquidate their positions if they continue to lose money. So that will be an interesting entry. And then of course the target is going to be the top of this value area, somewhere around 425, if we continue to see a move down in the Qs. So overall, based of what we are seeing in the VIX, what we're seeing in the SPX, what we're seeing in the Qs, what we're seeing in the action of some stocks like SMCI, based on what we're probably going to see in Nvidia, I do think that we have to be ready for a possible window of weakness, which is actually tradable, right? I do think that it's going to be tradable. These are two names that I'm watching. Usually shorting the indexes is much easier than shorting the stocks, because the stocks sometimes they can have news, they can have something different, but shorting the indexes is actually kind of the easiest way I have found to get some exposure in a possible continuation to the downside, right? And then of course a name that I actually traded last week, I was talking about Apple. Right, remember guys, in last week's video, if you saw last week's video, I was talking about how I was short Apple. I shorted Apple somewhere around this level right here, took my profits right here at this level, somewhere around 184. You can see that we continue to trade to the downside. And I told you in that video that that was not a very popular opinion, but my thesis was that Apple rally, we got rejected at this 50 daily moving average, we got confirmation the next day, and then of course the moving averages started to trend to the downside. My momentum was negative. That increased the probability that we're going to see a continuation to the downside. So this was actually one of my best trades of the week. So Apple still looking bearish. I do think that we're going to see some continuation to the downside. And then two names that I'm watching is going to be Google, right? This indicator that I have here in my charts is one indicator that I wanted to study for a while, but this is actually the market webs indicator. If you're asking what indicator is this one, this is the market webs indicator. You can see right here we have the name. This is the market webs indicator. Pretty cool indicator. They used to have this indicator available only on Thinkorswim. Now they have it available right here on TradingView. Pretty amazing. Basically, in a summary, what the indicator does, it calculates the value, right? Basically, the fixed range volume profile from the previous month, and then you get that profile into the month that you're trading, and then you get some very interesting levels to trade off. But that's gonna be a topic for a different video. Right now, what I'm watching in Google is that Google is actually losing that 50 daily moving average. If we happen to see some kind of bounce, right, to retest this 50, perhaps this anchor VWAP right here, I do think that that's going to be a really nice opportunity to grab some short exposure in Google, targeting somewhere around this 136 level. That's going to be an interesting trade. And then I'm also watching Microsoft. So Microsoft had an amazing run. You can see right here that we are finding support at the top of the value area from the previous month. But what I'm seeing here is that we had a huge gap, which basically suggests that we're having weakness in Microsoft and that sellers are in control. And what I'm seeing is a pretty nice bear flag that probably is going to break to the downside. First target, of course, is going to be the close of this gap right here. But then perhaps we're going to see a little bit of continuation, especially if we happen to close below the moving averages. Perhaps we're going to see a move to the downside, a retest of this value area, and then perhaps an eventual test of that 50 daily moving average. So those are going to be the names that I'm watching, and that's going to be the thesis for next week, guys. So keeping it pretty simple, the price action is showing some bearish momentum right here, and I do think that is really important for us to pay attention to that, combined with the seasonality that we just talked. So always keeping it pretty simple, guys, just doing my best to just focus on what the charts are saying, right? We're not taking a look at any of the other metrics, right? Like what is the breadth and everything like that. I just want to focus on the price, and right now I do think that the price is suggesting that the path of least resistance, at least in the short term, is going to be to the downside. So once again, guys, thank you so much, guys, for watching the video. I will see you on future videos. Take care and bye bye.